Hello, everybody. This is Mark Kumar, your lifestyle entrepreneur and proud founder of Simple Podcast Cloud company, which is a podcast hosting company for people who are looking for hosting their podcast. We provide that service, and that is what we are here for, to support podcaster. And speaking of podcaster, I have my dear friend Wen, who is going to share her journey about podcasts. So Wen, please take your time to introduce yourself, or tell us a little bit about yourself.
For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Win Charles, and I am the founder of Ask Win. Ask Win is my main podcast, which Mark has been interviewed on way back when. And so you guys need to go check that out. And then, well, you don't need to. I think it would be great plus for Mark to get his podcast, get his interview on my podcast we listen to. And then I'm also doing the artwork of CP, which is all about cerebral palsy, which we'll get to in a minute. And then I am also doing the amazing voices of teachers because I'm a retired educator. So I bring teachers on to talk about their educational experiences.
Awesome. So tell me, when how did you get inspired or thought about starting your own podcast? Like, what motivated you? Like, I want to start my own podcast. What's your backstory on that?
Well, I first of all, I wrote a book. S I wrote a book, and then great. I'm like, great. Now I hit the publishing button on this dang book, which is now 10 years old. How am I going to market this book, which I didn't know podcasting existed? I was a listener to podcasts. I listened to Joanna Penn of the Creative Penn based in the UK. And as I was writing my book, because that's all she talks about is writing and publishing books, but I didn't know that being a podcast host would be a thing. I thought, okay, then we'll try it. And um first I tried YouTube, and that failed only because a fan wanted to support me, and they said, "I can't support you. I want to support you. I want to see you, but I can't have my laptop open." They literally said this. I can't have my laptop open while I'm working and watching you. So I'm like, okay, there goes my YouTube stardom out the door. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And then I thought, okay, here we go, back to the drawing board. And then I tried Blog Talk Radio, which was a complete disaster. Those of you who all podcast and know what I'm talking about. And then I tried um, every podcasting host under the sun, and it's like, okay. And then I finally got the bravery to stick up and asked in a podcasting group, I said, well, what is the best um, podcast host? And people go, Lipson, Lybsyn, Liberated Syndication. And I'm like, Lipson, what's that? And I'm like, okay, let's try this. And then my first episode out of the shoot was me interviewing Joanna Penn. And ever since then, Tuesdays and Thursdays, rabbit hole was a win, basically. And so it's like, okay. Then I decided to start podcast all about cerebral palsy. And then I decided to start a podcast all about my old profession. And that turns into the amazing voices of teachers. And yes, the feed is still active. And yes, I plan to pick that one up again. But Ask When is really what I'm known for.
So tell me a little bit about the Ask When podcast. What does it contain of the people who may not know about it? Like, how did you come up with that particular idea of the podcast? Like, what does it cover? Things of that nature.
Well, it's interview based, and I interview people from famous authors to famous podcasters to podcasting startups like yourself. And I interview just people of everyday life, people that want to learn about cerebral palsy because 9 times out of 10, I'm finding out that people don't know about cerebral palsy unless they know me. And because cerebral palsy is one of those childhood disabilities that when it falls into adulthood, people just go underneath rocks.
Interesting. Okay. So how do you when you obviously you find the interview approach for your podcast is better? Do you also have play around with the solo podcast where it's just you and you're talking, giving advice, helping people out, or no?
I I have,
Okay.
and the way I did was I did it on Anchor, which no, thank you. No, thank you to Anchor. And so I may bring that back,
Okay.
but to I would definitely have to switch either to you guys or Blueberry to do that. I would either have to switch to you guys or Blueberry to do that because I can't handle Anchor. Anchor is way too below my league now, and it's like if Anchor goes bye bye, my work will go bye bye too. So
Right.
I have to. Um, and for those of you who don't know what Mark and I are talking about, Anchor is it's a song in the podcast aside because Anchor is a free platform. So everyone and their brother could pick up and do a podcast, which I don't like. I like stability. It's just been my modus operandi for years. Stable win, stable schedule, stable podcasting host. And so if I were going to do a solo show again, I would have to do either Mark's host or I would either have to do Blueberry, which Blueberry is run by Todd Kaufman, which I would um I would think that um any of them, for the exception of Anchor, are more stable than Anchor itself.
Okay, so I personally don't like Anchor myself because when I was starting out my podcasting career, you can call it now, it's like everybody's like you should go with Anchor, Anchor, and then there's a little loophole that they sneakily put in there. Sometimes they say they own your content, sometimes they don't own your content. So it's like they change their policies every now and then. So let me ask you this question: when it comes to a podcasting host, what are some of the features that you specifically look for that works for you?
That you can be that one. It's easy to work. I have a disability. My assistant has a disability. We both have cerebral palsy, and even though we're okay on technology, um, because of our disability, we like things easy. So, my recommendation is it's easy to work. Another recommendation from a friend of mine, who I consider one of my mentors in the podcasting, space. Actually, there's two people that I consider my mentors. One of them I actually had a conversation with before, way before COVID hit, and that was the last time I saw people. By the way, I saw people at Podcast Movement, and no Podfest, sorry, no, not Podcast Movement, Podfest, and then I've been home for 5 months. But it's another long story in itself. Why? But and you guys know why, because of COVID. But I consider two mentors of mine. One of them, Dave Jackson, the other one, Mr. Harry Durant. And what Dave Jackson, and he talks about this publicly on the School of Podcasting, which comes out every Monday morning. And I try and listen to it every Monday morning. And what David Jackson has said, and he'll state this publicly too, he actually works for Lipson in their technical support department. And so what he says is they don't mess around. The podcast host shouldn't mess around with your files. And I strongly believe that too. And so I like ease. I like it doesn't mess around with your files. I like the fact that you're available everywhere on Apple, on Google, on the smart speakers, on um, everywhere, so that people can listen to you on their laptops or listen to you on a jog.
Right, absolutely, and that's one of the features that I absolutely love about podcasting is because simply what you said, it is so versatile and very flexible. Unlike reading a book or watching a video, you have to give it a specific setting. Meaning, if you want to watch a video, you have to sit down and watch a video, or you're standing up. If you want to read a book, you could only do one thing. Unlike your podcast, you could literally plug in your earbuds and you can go for a walk, you can cook, you can work out, you could do multiple different things. And that's what I love about podcasting is it. So what is it that you actually love about podcasting in terms of a host?
I am. I have spoken to people and got interviewed. I got interviewed yesterday at 7 a.m. by a podcast host in Africa. Africa. I didn't think my story was going to go global, but that's what they want to do. And I'm like, okay, sure. A panel discussion in my PJs, thank you very much, on StreamYard. And I'm like, okay, sure. And my phone was ringing, and it was 7 a.m. And I'm like, excuse the phone ringing. And this was doing the live interview too, and these people started laughing at me because they're like, "When? That's a real life, a phone ringing." Um, and and it's like I didn't realize my story was so powerful. So what I love about podcasting is interviewing and the I love interviewing, but I love sharing my story just as much as I love interviewing.
All right. Yeah, definitely. It definitely gives you a very global reach because I'm sure you have been in a situation where same thing like myself. I'm talking, like you say, you're talking to somebody on Africa, a completely different continent, right? And then it's a completely different time zones and all those things. So how do you manage these different time zones? So, for example, right now I'm in New York. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I could be talking to somebody who is in the UK or New Zealand or Africa or India. It was like it's like a 9 o'clock at nighttime. So what's your process of managing times?
A scheduling system and a human to manage the chaos. I happen to hire my BFF as my um, as my assistant, and she knows it. And I don't mess with her scheduling system. I walk in, I do the interview, I hand it to her. she hands it to the appropriate person, and then she hands it to the guest. I I only walk in and do the interview when I said, "Hey, do you want to do a project with me?"
Right.
And this is before I was um, considering podcasting, and we were still on YouTube when I came up with this idea. And she goes, "Sure, I'm your BFF." She was a little bit hesitant, mind you.
Right.
And I said, "Well, I am thinking about coming up with a YouTube TV show." And this was 10 years ago now. And you can still see, there's still footage on my website. My, my goodness. And so, um, and so I said to her, "Do you want to help me with this project?" And she goes, "Sure. What is it?" And I'm like, "Well, it's going to be a YouTube TV show where I'm going to interview people." And I asked her, I said, "Well, what do you want to do specifically? Do you want to be my co-host? Do you want to be my assistant?" And she goes, "Let me be your assistant." Well, 10 years later, she's my co-host on the Artwork of CP. I've warmed up enough to do a full-fledged podcast and put our stories out to the world. I mean, now granted, it's all about CP and us talking. It's not an interview-based show like Ask Winners, but we're getting there to the point of we're getting there to the point where she's comfortable enough to share her story, and it's it's getting good.
Okay. That's I'm so glad it's working out for you, and then I wish nothing but much success for you, and then I hope you go very very high, definitely. So first of all, congratulations for doing it for a long period of time, and next thing I want to ask you is like, for example, if I am just starting out, thinking about starting a podcaster, what equipment would you recommend for me to start off with?
I have my props. See what I'm holding?
Uh huh. Earbuds.
I have earbuds, and I have the fancy podcast mic, but 9 times out of 10, I do it via Uber conference with a pair of earbuds, and it's perfectly fine. And what I'm coming to discover, and Mark, to spill the beans a little bit on you, um, because everyone's using Zoom.
Right.
Um, Zoom has, I'm beginning to hate Zoom. the more, um, the more, um, the more power that I can have when it comes to the video. I can use Zoom, but the quality is very, very low, and it's um, and Google Meets and um,
Hangouts. Yeah.
Google Hangouts, are just awful, awful. So I particularly like Uber Conference or StreamYard. If I could figure out StreamYard, I would, you guys.
Okay, yeah, that definitely. I mean, people who are just starting out, like if they don't know much about it, like Zoom is definitely well. How you can go to Zoom is Zoom.us rather than .com. They have US, and then they are the easiest and convenient way to have a virtual meeting. However, the quality of the video it's not the greatest. If you want to put it on YouTube, you're like, hey, I'm just gonna put this on YouTube, and it's not the greatest quality. The audio part is somewhat okay, but I feel like the audio or video part is not the greatest. So I use the another app platform called StreamYard, and you will find a link in the show notes below. The video quality is amazing. They can go up to like 1080p, which is great. So you can record it in a video, and then strip out the audio part for your podcast, and the video part can go on a YouTube or any other video hosting you want. So we love Simple Podcast Cloud. StreamYard is an amazing service, and that's what we use. So and tell me if someone is like, hey, I have the equipment, I have the platform, and then if I want to create a content for my podcast show, which one or what's the best way to create content? Should I go on the solopreneur, meaning just go myself, or interview, which is easier and faster?
It, for me, now I'm in a unique position that I am I am going to be I am acquiring a journalism degree, and I will use that platform behind me to be the voice for the voiceless. But for me, it's easier to do an interview style because I like interview style. For those of you who are a little afraid of interview style, um, go solo. It doesn't matter just as long as you get your story out there, and it doesn't matter just as long as you get your content out there. I mean, podcasting will go up, consistent podcasting will go up because of COVID, because everyone's looking to better their lives and educate themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if somebody who's just starting out and they're like, hey, which one is better, like you suggested, I feel like the interview one is a lot better because you can have an amazing conversation with somebody, and then like we're having right now, and you can get a really good content out of it because when you have just solopreneur where you're just doing it yourself, it's just your ideas, your thoughts, and then there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to actually grow, go interview somebody else because they may share something with you that you didn't even know that that was a possible. Did that ever happen to you? Like you were interviewing somebody else and they said something like boom, and like whoa, I didn't know that.
I I have a funny story. I um I was interviewing someone, and it's public knowledge that this public knowledge is out there. I didn't realize that um, the thing I was interviewing him on would not only change my life forever, but the thing I was interviewing them on, I was interviewing them on disability trust, and I didn't realize that assistive devices could be bought out of a disability trust. I'm like, excuse me, no one told me that. No one told me that. And I'm like, yeah, ca- you taught me something that I didn't know. People teach me something all day long. I mean, I've talked about microbiotic cooking, and I talked about CP and the trials and tribulations of CP. And now today I'm going to be talking about wildfires and the trials and tribulations of that. And no, podcasting is super amazing.
Yeah, you said it best. It's simply amazing way to connect with people, learn new things, and then grow your personal branding, whether it be business brand or your personal brand. You know, it's the. Have you noticed any increaseness, if that's a word now, increaseness in your personal branding because of podcasting?
I have. I've noticed Well, I've noticed the connections I've made. I mean, I've made connections all across the country, and people want to interview me. I want to interview them. You and I got hooked up because of Jim, and you and Jim has a podcast, and I forget Jim's podcast at this very moment. But look up Jim Bijou, you guys, and he's fascinating. And you can hear my interview on his podcast and my interview on his interview on mine, and then Monk's interview way back when he was just starting Smoke Cloud, and because you and I met because Jim Jim is a powerful Jim Diesel is a powerful networker, and go go chew after this podcast, and there's a couple podcasts that you must listen to because I'm a 100% audio learner. I'm a little bit of a visual learner. I'm not a tactile learner. I'm not a kinesthetic learner by any means. But um, but and I spoke to someone about that in the education space because the education space is now changing, and I think that podcasting is going to be an integral part because I wish now every teacher's going to yell at me because for what I'm about to say. Every
Okay.
teacher's going to yell at me. But I wish that Amazon and Google would make a version of their smart speakers specifically for education purposes. And so that teachers could put it in the middle of the table and let their kids listen to it instead of um, bringing in their own personal devices. Why not have the why not have the Apple smart speakers? Yes, I said Apple smart speakers because Apple has one too. Why not have the Apple smart speakers, the Amazon smart speakers, the Google smart speakers make an educational version where we can put kid related content on and kid related podcast and of course history podcast and of course diversity podcast like mine. And why not? Why not? Because teachers are, they have to think out of the box this year, but why not give teachers a break for 2 seconds and the kids could sit and we can have interactive conversations based upon the educational learning, based upon the educational boxes that are invented by Google and invented by Amazon. Yeah. And so you could go, hey, hey Google, and I'm sorry, I just set up everyone's Google. Yeah. But you can go, hey, the smart speaker name. Um, why not play Ask Win and why not have it pipe through classrooms? I know teachers that have um, Amazon smart speakers in their classrooms, and I'm just thinking maybe Google and maybe Amazon and maybe Apple should do something for the educational space.
That would be a really good a idea, I would think, because it will definitely help out. Because the time that we're in, because everybody's online, staying home, so kids can definitely get educated from podcasting and in this audio. Like you said before, you can just plug in your ear and then kids can listen to it rather than listen to something else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
it's
they they say screen time. Oh, screen time is bad. Oh, screen time is bad. Well, if you put kids in front of a Zoom, ugh, don't get me started. No,
yeah,
don't get
exactly.
this retired educator started. But if you put kids in front of a Zoom
Right.
screen, hello, then the screen time is even worse. They want the iPads, they want the iPhones, and they want screen time. No, I was talking to a friend yesterday who's actually helping out with something I'm doing, and the son walks outside and says, "Mom, can I watch another YouTube video?" And the mom goes, "No, that's enough YouTube." And I'm like, "Hello, you just these kids have been sitting in front of Zoom since the end of April,
Right.
and you're the ones complaining about screen time? Which that's
Yeah, that's a whole another conversation. We
a
can go
whole
for
nother
hours and hours.
conversation. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. So that's why I'm saying, why not implement what we already use as assistive devices,
Right.
and why not gear them towards education?
Sure, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And like I said, it's a whole conversation, another conversation we can go
Oh,
talk about it
definitely. I'm
forever.
gonna come back
So,
on
so
and talk
yeah.
about that too.
So let me ask you this question. So if when let's say you are pick a number. Let's say you're 32 right now, hypothetically speaking, and a 27-year-old version of yourself asks you, "Hey, I want to become an entrepreneur." What advice would you give the younger self of yourself?
Man, Monk, you put me on the spot. Um, but
Yeah.
the younger advice I would give myself is don't go into a day job. Don't go into a day job in education. Just go into your day job slash your passion of journalism and saving people and saving people with the power of your voice. And if I was given that wisdom at age, it would have been 20.
22,
It would
27
have
doesn't
been
the younger version, whoever it is.
Yeah, it would have been a 17-year-old when I would have already got a journalism degree. No, instead I got stuck in education. And I finally kicked myself out of education, and actually COVID kicked me out of education, and it's the best decision I have ever made in my life.
All right, cool. So let's move into future. What is in plan for Win from let's say 3 years from now? What she wants to accomplish?
Well, the journalist,
Okay.
which is coming sooner than you guys think. It's coming April and April of 2022. I'll be
Okay.
a journalist, and so be a journalist. Have a book on podcasting and all about podcasting, and then I will still continue the work I'm doing, just better and stronger.
Awesome. I really, really am excited about your book, about podcasting, because I know a lot of people are going to benefit
Oh
a
yeah,
lot from it.
oh
So
yeah.
that is awesome. I wish you much, much success. And when you have written that book, reach back onto me. I will help you
I
promote it
will.
personally.
I will because um, now it's sitting on a Google Doc right now. I just have to um, get it out there and get it published, and then we'll see.
All right, cool. All right, cool. So this is the part of the show where I ask you, like, right now, the stage is all yours. You can share anything you want with the audience or give any advice you want to give to help them move ahead in life a lot faster. And if there's anything you would like to tell how people can get in touch with you, your podcast, your website, whatever you want, the right now the store space
My
is all
podcast
yours.
is the amazing voices of teachers. It's the artwork of CP. It's the Ask Win, and it can be found everywhere. And it's a clean podcast because, as we talked about early on, like things clean. And so, yes, it's kid friendly, although the older the kid, the more concepts they can get. But yes, it's kid friendly, and yes, it's um, grandma approved. As I say that, I always think, well, would my grandmother like to listen to it? And I have a funny story on that. My grandmother's best friend actually owned Minderall, which for those of you who've heard that, no, she was actually part of the Scripps company. Well, for those of you who know about Scripps, um, they actually own Minderall, and so and Minderall actually owns Stitcher. So essentially, unbeknownst to me, my grandmother's best friend owns one of one of the top podcast companies in the nation, and I find it funny that I've met one of the owners who owned Scripps Enterprises and who happened to be one of my grandma's best friends. And by the way, you guys, this happens to be my legal name. My legal name is Win, and I was given that by my paternal grandmother. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And you guys can find me at askwin.webelieve.com. And Monk will stick that in the show notes. And just enjoy life, you guys. Thank you, Mark. That is. And so uh, just enjoy life. And if you guys want to come on and just pal around with me and see what I do, you're more than welcome to it. I'm also a podcast coach and I can teach you how to do content and teach you how podcasting works. And Mark is, even though I don't use his services, I use Lipsim, but Mark, I'm watching you succeed from Design Lines.
All right. Thank you so much, Lynn. And when I have a pleasure meeting you here, and thank you so much for sharing the all this content, secret, and all the stuff that you have known about podcasting. I appreciate it, and we here at Simple Podcast Club appreciate your advice and everything else. So we wish you much success and happy life.
Thank you.